Hello and welcome to Sports Opinion. We got a little feedback going here, Joe.
Yeah.
The weekly sports talk show on Channel 18. My name is Dirk Keller. Joe Murphy is the guy who's going to fix the sound on this really quick. You think the TV's got the audio turned up too high, probably?
Of course.
Of course. There we go. All the way to zero. Okay, we're going to start over. This is Sports Opinion, the weekly sports talk show on Channel 18. I am Dirk Keller. This is Bob Boyd. Over here to the far side is Pat White.
Good to see you, Dirk.
Earl, always good to see you. Earl Murphy is back as usual. We've got a very special guest here today. Jensen is the longtime associate head coach with the Iowa women's basketball team. And Jen, welcome to Sports Opinion.
Thank you so much. I feel like I've arrived now. I'm on the show.
Yeah. Well, we've arrived because you're on the show. Joe, we're still getting a lot of feedback in here, so... Jan, want to talk a little bit about a lot of things about Jan Jensen. In my mind, don't take this the wrong way, but you are one of, if not the legendary high school girls basketball player in the state of Iowa. I want the viewers to know that as a senior in high school, Jan led the nation in scoring average per game with 66 points per game for Elkhorn-Kimballton, her high school team. That's in southwest Iowa. Her senior year at Drake, Jan led the nation in scoring, just under 30 points a game at 29.6. There aren't many people, male or female, who can say they led the nation in high school and college.
I would like it to be noted that I still had a lot of friends. I think sometimes you can...
We should note that her high school was 6-on-6.
Yes,
which
that's
makes
right.
exactly
And we're going to
That's
talk
right.
about
Yeah.
6-on-6.
Makes the scoring different.
I think I
Well,
read
you would have scored 66 if it was 5-on-5, don't you think?
Oh, sure. Run my 68.
your graduating class in high school had about 25, 26
Yep,
kids.
That's
Wow.
exactly right. It was
Just amazing.
It was a fun way to grow up. That's
How old
for
were
sure.
you when you started playing?
Third grade.
How did you get started?
I had an older brother. We played out on our little driveway on the farm. But that was the first time I learned what feeding the post meant, because he was a high school basketball player, and I when he first started talking in my third grade mind, I thought, are they hungry? I didn't know. I got that the post was the big player, and then I started to ask him more about the lingo. But that was one of my first memories,
Yeah.
and then obviously I became a very hungry post because I got fed a lot, scoring that many points. But I was blessed. I had a great coach, great family. I think life is a lot about timing. I hit it at the right time. 6-on-6 was at its peak probably when I was coming up, and just the system that we had in place in high school. I think they needed a scorer with my coach's philosophy, and I had great teammates that, everybody, kind of bought into it. And, really going through it, I think if you ask any of my high school teammates, everybody had a blast. And it really wasn't about that scoring record, and it was just part of what we did. And I guess I'm the lucky one that got to take the shots.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun as a high school group of girls.
What
for
years
sure.
were those in high school, Jan?
84 to 87.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those that aren't aware, 6-on-6 girls basketball was really something special for the small towns.
Yes.
When you were in high school, when I was in high school, the bigger towns like Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, they didn't even have the 6-on-6. In many cases, didn't have 5-girl ball either.
Right.
And I think it's hard to overemphasize how important the 6-on-6 game was to the small communities, because basically the towns rolled up and everybody went to the game.
They did.
And it was girls and boys.
Right.
Jan, in that period of time, 84 to 87, was that the only women's sport available?
No, actually, we had fully funded. We had 4 sports available.
Okay.
We had track, softball, volleyball, and basketball. Basketball was the popular one.
Yes.
It was in its heyday, but the state of Iowa has long been a pioneer in equal opportunity for women and for girls. And even the small schools, it was really foreign to me when I went to college that the women's games weren't as attended because we got more attendance than the boys in high
Right.
school. It was foreign to me that the budgets there was such a discrepancy because in high school that would have never happened. It
Yeah.
was equal. The gender equity piece was just a way of life. And so that was an interesting learning curve to become a college athlete and then to really learn that, you know, not everybody cared. And a lot of universities were just having to have a female, you know, athletic department. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of eye-opening. But I tell you, I've been blessed with just great men and women coaches that really understood the importance and the education that can take place, not just the winning,
Right.
not just cutting down the nets, but whether you're a little guy or a little girl, when you learn how to succeed and fail and you learn how to have to, you know, be on the free throw line and hit the game winner and handle all of the praise, or you miss it and handle all the disappointment, that doesn't know gender. But all
Right.
those lessons that you learn on the court, they can help you be so successful.
And working together with a group of
Exactly.
teammates, with
That's right.
leaders like coaches and even referees, respect for
Did you-
authority.
Totally.
Did you win more than you lost?
I'm very fortunate to say yes, I did. And I hope it stays that way, Earl.
That's right. That's right.
Amen
We
to
do
that.
too.
What was it like growing up in the Kimballton area? You grew up on the farm
Yep.
outside of town.
Yep. It was so idealistic. I mean, I feel so fortunate now. I couldn't go back to that.
Right.
You know, God bless the farmers and my father who, you know, you can work and toil, but it's a lot depends on the rain and the sunshine and the market.
The
and,
market especially.
And I remember a lot of stressful times growing up when you're waiting for that thundercloud to break, or you're watching the noon markets or listening on the radio. It was a wonderful way of life, but there were so many things out of your control. But the community, the farming community, and the lessons of, you know, taking care of your neighbor, helping out, working hard, humility. There are so many great people in my community, and I mean, the whole state of Iowa. I just feel so blessed to have always, you know, predominantly all my life lived and worked here, with the exception the year I played in Europe professionally. But growing up is fantastic. I had great parents, great grandparents, great coaching. But what was fun with the 6-on-6 is in rural towns, if you study that, they love their 6-on-6. And when a 6-on-6 game was happening, and with the boys to follow, I mean, restaurants closed.
Yep.
You know, church outings, they were kind of built around the basketball schedule. So it was an event. It was a social event, and you had all those people excited and enjoying that journey.
Fairly unique to Iowa, and really a piece of Americana that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
I think small towns still support their
Yeah.
girls
They
and
do.
boys
They do.
teams.
Yeah.
But there was something unique about the 6-on-6, or the 6-player game that is really hard to replicate. Like you said, towns just shut down and everybody went to the game. And often, after the girls' game, which was usually played first, a lot of fans would leave.
Yeah, you know, I think part of
They
it
stick around
with
for the
that is
boys.
6-on-6 lent itself to scoring. And let's just face it, we're all enamored with scoring. Whether you're watching a run and gun basketball team or a high scoring football team, you like to see, predominantly people like to see the scoring. And I think 6-on-6 was so fun because people, you know, when you were scoring, boy, it was 130 to 90 a night, you know, or 95 to 87, and there was a really good clip to it. So I think part of that, if you like fast-paced basketball, there weren't too many boys teams that were faster.
Well,
How did you feel then when the state of Iowa switched from 6-on-6 to the 5-player game in the high school ball? Did that bother you a bit?
You know, it was interesting because I was a young coach at the time, and that was big controversy, and I was very close to Wayne Cooley, who really, you know, created and coined the term the Iowa girl, and had built that entity up to be so magical if you were an Iowa girl. But I also coached the college game, and I had a lot of my coaches that I was recruiting that were predominantly from the larger schools. They were tired of the 6-on-6, and they wanted it all be together. They were playing 5-on-5 in the bigger cities. The rural coaches, they were wanting to hold on to it. So it was kind of a very delicate situation.
You were caught in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and being a 6-on-6 player who made the transition to college, who then played professionally, we didn't have a league in the United States back then. I could probably speak to it a little bit more substantially than a lot of people, because a lot of people were always talking about emotion, and nostalgia.
Yeah.
And the nostalgic part of me, I wanted to keep it forever. My grandmother played it. It was unique. No one else in the country was playing it. It was a moneymaker. Vets Auditorium in Des Moines was sold out. You couldn't get a ticket in the heyday of 6-on-6. So all of those things made it really hard to say, yeah, I'm ready to change. We need to change. But being a player that then made the transition to college, I don't think I could have made that transition as successfully had it not been for the 5-on-5 AAU or summer ball experience that I had. Mm-hmm. And I traveled between my sophomore and junior year and junior and senior year extensively playing against some of the best competition in the country, the 5-on-5 game.
What I remember mostly about the 6-on-6 women's basketball was that he had a large sign out on a small town, and I went to the goal for like, hey, that's girls basketball.
Yep.
And I think they should still put up the sign.
The signs, right? They were very proud of the 6-on-6 champions,
yeah.
And I think they do hold on to that history, and that was part of the reason why it was hard to vote that it needed to change. Mm-hmm. But I think, as with anything in life, when girls were families, they wanted to play the normal style. And you could feel it coming. You could feel like, there was a big swell that was swirling. And I think Wayne Cooley, he listened at the right time. I think he made the decision at the right time. And as nostalgic as it was in 1993, that was the last 6-on-6 tournament.
Okay.
It was time because
20 years.
Any state don't have 5-on-5.
Oklahoma was one state.
Yeah, they were the last two. Well, Oklahoma and then Iowa was the last to go.
Was 6-on-6 more prevalent at the turn of the century, or?
I never have researched that. I don't know. I know when my grandmother first started playing, she played in the 20s, and there was 3 courts then. There were 3 courts, and there would be the guards that were the defenders. They'd get the rebounds and they'd throw it to the middle, and the middle person would basically catch it, and she'd throw it to the forwards, and the forwards were the shooters.
I'll be darned.
And then we took that part out, and then it became the half court game.
Yeah.
And then
Took
you
out
had
the
your shooters
middleman,
and defenders.
middlewoman.
Yeah. And so I know that then it went to the 6-on-6, and it all started. They were worried about the physicality for women and how much they could run up and down, and that was one thing.
Seems archaic now, but
Yeah. Well, even when the 80s, which is archaic now, when I'm talking to some of our players. But my grandmother, she was alive to, see my high school career, college career. But we had an interview, I think one of the Omaha stations. I lived in the western part of the state. They came out and interviewed us, and they asked her, what have you seen, or what do you like or don't like? And she's like, I can tell you one thing: they show way too much skin, and it's way too physical. Because she played in the Bloomers, and she didn't like, because we even now, this 5-on-5 game is much more physical than 6-on-6, but even then you'd get knocked down a few times.
Oh, just ask Sam Logic how physical
Exactly.
today's game is.
Yeah.
Jan, what is the current high school for Elkhorn Kimmelton? They're merged?
They're totally merged. It doesn't exist anymore.
Uh-huh.
It exists, but it's a Elkhorn Kimmelton Exira.
Oh, that's right.
But it's not the Lady Deans anymore.
Yeah.
I believe they're
What's it called? All 3 of those names?
Yeah, Elkhorn, Kimmelton, Exira, and I think it's the Spartans. And I'm sorry that I can't
And
recall
I think
that.
Exira won it, the state title, their last
Yeah,
year
they
as an
did.
independent.
Yep.
I have
With
a,
Hallie Christopherson.
Yeah, they did. She was
oh,
a-
that's
yeah.
right. That's right. I watched that game. I have a good friend who grew up there in Exira.
Yeah.
I have been there actually.
Yeah.
And I've been to Audubon, which is where your grandma was
Yep.
from. You talk about grandma, and I have to ask you to tell us a little bit more about Grandma Lottie,
Yeah.
state champion at Audubon.
Yep. She played in the 20s, and her name was Dorcas, which is a biblical name. Dorcas Anderson. Randolph was her married name, but that was really a fun blessing because growing up, it kind of skipped a generation. My mother was very musically inclined. She played 6 or 7 different instruments, beautiful singer, organist, pianist, but didn't really play basketball, sports. So then when I came up, my grandma and I, shared a lot. And then when I got older in high school, I started to become a little wiser and asked her a lot more questions. And she shared with me some of her scrapbooks. And her grandparents came over from Denmark. So a lot of her scrapbooks, she was still writing in Danish.
Wow.
And so she was kind of translating. And then even some of the newspaper articles from when she played were in Danish.
Oh,
And then there were some, I never quite
Isn't
got
that
why
something?
some were in English and so forth. But nonetheless, when I kept researching the state championship for them, they went by train, which was a major deal.
Oh yeah.
And they won it, and it was at the old Drake Fieldhouse. And I chose to attend Drake University to play, and I found her little state championship. It looked like a your stereotypical little championship
Loving cup.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it had engraved on there state champion. And then I found an article where the game was, she'd won the state championship. It was like 22-16, but she had 18 points.
Oh, wow.
And then she had 16 out of the semifinals out of 20. So they nicknamed her Lottie because she scored a lot of points. And so then we kind of
And
had a
you
kick
never
out of
knew
that.
that.
I didn't know that till I read
You
that
thought
article.
her name was Lottie.
And she was in her 80s, and no, I never knew the nickname. It was always Dorcas.
Oh,
I never
yeah.
knew she had. It was just the nickname in high school. She never went by
okay.
Lottie. But then when I read it, she started to kind of cough up that she was a pretty good player, and we knew she was because she went into the Hall of Fame. But it was
Yeah.
fun that just to kind of hear her talk about it because she had forgotten some of those stories as well.
That's a great story.
Do you still have the scrapbooks?
Oh yes, I have. In fact, when she passed away in '95, and we were at Drake, and we'd made the NCAA tournament. We were in Washington D.C.
And she's your mom's
My
mother.
mom's mom. So I had to. I came home in the middle. We won the first round. Came home for the funeral. Flew back for the second round game. But then when we went through her stuff, I gathered all the memorabilia. So in my home right now, I have a really cool 1920s pictures. The rule book from 1920.
Really?
The score sheet, her official championship poster, and I have
Wow.
the uniform.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like the history.
That's
and
museum quality stuff.
It
there.
is. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever been to Denmark?
I haven't. I played professionally, but I didn't have enough time to get there. I played in Germany. I got to Paris. I got to Austria, but I do want to go to Denmark. I'm going to go with my best friend from high school.
yeah?
She has family over there. She was an all-state guard on that 6
What was her name?
Cami Christensen.
Okay, I remember reading
And
about her.
she was a tremendous guard. She would have been an okay forward. She didn't have a great shot, but she was a great friend. And her family, her aunt and uncle still lives in Denmark, so she's traveled over there extensively.
Wow.
So that's kind of on the bucket list. I want to go over there and kind of explore the heritage.
Oh, you
and
should.
do it with her.
I hope
Do
you get to
you
do
know
that
how
soon.
it came to be that Danish people settled in the Elkhorn-Kimballton area?
No, it wasn't a great story. They just, of course, came over to Ellis Island and they migrated, and then they picked the little valley. It was a pretty area, but much to my father's chagrin, he thought the Germans were a heck of a lot smarter because they had the flat land where we live is very rolling, so we lose a lot of yield when it's
Yeah,
on
that's
the hillside. But it was just a patriarchal family started and kept telling everybody to come.
Have you still got family back there?
Yeah, my mom and dad still live there. They live in town now, but my dad still farms about 120 acres, but he doesn't have any livestock anymore. my brother. If you're ever driving on 80, he owns a little bar in Kimballton called Arnold's, or Luggers. His nickname's Luggers, but he bought it like 27 years ago. It was
Really?
named Arnold, so we can't quite. But it's a good
Pat?
Hawkeye
Road trip.
hangout.
Yeah.
Road trip.
And you tell him you know me, and you'll get a great deal. I tell you. I don't know how he keeps the lights on.
Jan, when she's on the radio, post-game interview, she always signs off with, hello to all her family and friends in Southwest Iowa.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I tell you, they have a lot of relatives, not just my immediate family, but those folks are. They've been with me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and they've love the Hawkeyes. And I just, if God took me tomorrow, I tell you what, I couldn't have been more blessed with just so many people after a big win. When we beat Penn State a couple weeks ago, my old volleyball coach, she was texting me, and people from my hometown, and
Oh, your Facebook page just
Yes.
blew
It's-
up that night.
yeah, it did,
Yeah.
didn't it?
It was
Yeah.
great.
I love those.
It was great to follow. We were blessed to be able to watch it
Yeah.
on TV.
That was a fun one to have on TV. Yeah,
Yes.
that was nice.
I just, yeah.
It was good the one at Purdue last week wasn't, because we had so many chances. You'd have had heart
Oh.
attacks with us. We missed a few too many layups, but I tell you, our kids, our young women, they're great. And sometimes it bounces your way, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's all on how you react. And Lisa Bluter does a phenomenal job leading the ship. But we have 3 big games left, and I'm excited.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
We got a big game at Michigan on Saturday at 12:30. That will be on the Big Ten Network. And then the final home game of the season is next week on Thursday night. Thiara Taylor, I hope I'm pronouncing that.
Tiara.
The era.
Thiara.
Yeah.
Thiara Taylor is the lone senior on this year's team, and so she'll be honored. I encourage all of you, if you haven't been out to a women's game yet this season, get out there. There's always something special about Senior Day, or Senior Night, I guess in this case. The game next Thursday is going to be at 6 p.m. against Ohio State, and Lord knows we love to beat Ohio State.
Yes, we do in anything.
In anything,
Checkers,
but
marbles.
especially women's basketball. What's her name? From Ohio State that isn't there anymore.
Samantha Brahales.
Samantha Brahales.
That's a
Oh,
name that's just
my.
etched in all of our minds.
The
if you
woman
follow
everyone
us.
loves to
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah, thank goodness she's gone.
Oh, I kind of wish she was still there so we could cheer
Yeah.
her a little bit. She got rattled the last year she played here. I
Yeah,
remember
she
that
did.
very
We've
much.
we've had some pretty good success against Ohio State. They're in a coaching change right now, but
Yeah.
the Big Ten is just so tight this year.
Yeah.
We play at Michigan, which would be really difficult. I mean, everybody's kind of beating up on everybody, not unlike the men. I mean, it's
Yeah.
starting to shake out a little bit. But that game will be on the Big Ten Network. Our home game next Thursday, the last one will be on the Big Ten Network at 6.
I try not to tell people that though, because they'll
I
just
know,
stay home
they
and
stay
watch.
there, but hopefully the senior night we'll get out to see it
I hope
live
so.
in person.
I
And then our
hope so.
final game is at Illinois, and that will be on the Big Ten Network a week from Sunday at 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So we hopefully we can get some momentum. We sit at 20-7 right now. We're tied for 4th in the Big Ten, which is it's saying something with as competitive as it is. We're right there with Purdue. They have we're tied, but they beat us in head-to-head, so we need a little help from someone else. But as long as we take care of business in these next 3 games, we'd love to stay at 4th or 3rd, because in the Big Ten tournament, the top 4 seeds get a first-round bye.
It's nice to have that night
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And I hope that works out.
Then, I mean, you do host the first 2 rounds
Yeah,
of the
which is
NCAA tournament
exciting.
at Carver.
That is really exciting.
That's terrific too.
What's so fun about us
Deserved.
winning at Penn State was, they're sitting in first, but we won on their floor. So the confidence that our young women have gained, I think this Big Ten tournament is wide open. Regardless of what happens in the regular season, we feel really, really great going into that thing. And if we could, go in there and win that thing and come home to the NCAA tournament with a lot of confidence. But it's fun, and I guess that's why they call it March Madness.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Now, go ahead, Earl.
Are you going to talk about some of the players?
Yeah. I
We'll
would
talk
love
about
to.
them in a minute. I want
Yeah.
to get back to the transition you had from 6-girl ball to 5-woman ball at Drake. What was it like for you?
Well, for those of you that
Playing
remember
defense.
the rules, yeah. Well, first off, offensively, in 6-on-6, one of the craziest rules was if you were outside of the lane as an offensive player, and you were my defense, and we were on the wing, I could put the ball like this, and if you slapped even the ball, that was considered a foul. So
I thought that was so bizarre.
that was ridiculous,
when I moved
right?
here.
Well, if you were but I played inside a little bit, so I was kind of used to it. If I was in the paint crossing over, you might get hammered a bit. But when I remember my first, I played summer AAU, so I was kind of used to the rules. But going to Drake when everybody was a top Division I athlete, because when I signed at Drake, they were in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
So they were in the top in the country when I was being recruited. But one of the quick guards, which as an aside is Ellie Disterhoff, who's on our team right now. Her mother is Missy Slockett was her name, and she was the All Conference Freshman of the Year. And so she
At Drake?
was at Drake. So she was a sophomore or junior when I came in, and she stole it from me the first 2 times we scrimmaged and went down for easy layups. And that's when I knew I better start protecting the ball.
And your coach at Drake, who recruited you, was
Carol Baumgarten recruited me my first letter, who was the most successful, arguably, coach at Drake. And then Susan Yao, who was a sister to the late Kay Yao, Hall of Fame coach out of NC State. She recruited me, but really, I was so blessed to have Lisa my senior year. Yao left, who was a great person, a good coach, but was more of a teacher, not maybe the motivator, and kind of Lisa came in and really put it all together. Then that's when I had a really great opportunity my senior year and helped me get an agent to go overseas. But the transition was difficult that first 2 or 3 months. The game was more physical. Defense, I had a long way to go, because even summer ball defenses, even now, if you watch our young women or the young guys at the prime time or game time league, and no one's playing a whole lot of defense. It's all about the offense. So that was the adjustment, and that's why I think it was time for the 6-on-6 game to go and the 5-on-5, because it just made for a lot more seamless transition, and it allowed more Iowa girls to get recruited. Because the state really, the only people that were ever recruited were the shooters or the forwards in 6-on-6. The other gals, although they raised their hands just to defend the whole game, they never really were afforded the opportunities, because maybe they were pretty athletic, but no college coach was really looking on the defensive end, because there's always so much emphasis on scoring. Because at the end of the night, you need to have, you got to have a team where every kid is a threat. And so I think that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it was time for the game to shift.
good point.
And you played with Jenny Fitzgerald how many years at Drake?
3. She was a sophomore when I was a freshman. And so she unfortunately didn't get a chance to play for Lisa.
What was your record?
I don't really know our record back
Drake?
then. Yeah, thanks to Dirk, he reminded me of my scoring there, but I don't. And I think that's the beauty of being in a team sport. When I look back on my career, I don't remember many of the scores or the exact record, but man, do I remember laughing so hard after we went out to eat dinner and so was reenacting how Coach Bluter almost got a technical, or someone was reenacting how I fell at the free throw line. Those are the things. And then you just remember the whole body of work, and you remember the people. You remember cutting down the nets, certainly. But I couldn't tell you, the score of when we cut down the nets at Drake. I couldn't tell you the score, when we beat Wisconsin in 2008 to get a share of the Big Ten title. But man, do I remember the smiles in the locker room.
It stays with
Speaking
you
of
forever.
that, do you have a character on the team right now? I mean, one that's just kind of
I bet I know
the
who it
funny,
is.
the clown, the one that makes
Who
everybody
do you
laugh.
think it is?
I bet it's Claire.
Claire?
Claire Till?
I could see that being her, but no, I think it's all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank.
Is it
She's sophomore.
Sophomore.
She was starting earlier this year.
Callie Peschel?
Callie Peschel.
Yeah.
I think that just from what I observed,
They're both. I mean, this team is really fun. They all have great personalities, and at any time, they can lighten the mood.
That's good.
But the freshman Alexa Kostanek, she probably has
Really?
a little bit. She has a little bit of confidence to kind of throw it out there. If there's a tense moment and there needs to be a lightened comment. I think Alexa has the confidence to kind of step up and do it, but
Yeah.
they're all pretty much hams. I got to tell you, they'll step in front of any camera or do anything to get a laugh.
But
That's
can you
good.
take some time to describe the evolution of recruiting? You were, I think it's fair to say, highly recruited high school athlete, as that term would have existed back then. And you're the recruiting coordinator for Iowa today. Tell us about some of the changes.
Well, I think the big thing that we're facing now is just social media. Back then we had, you didn't even have email in the 80s. You had, your basic letters and the phone call. And then, of course, the visits coaches could make. And that has all stayed strong. But now, I mean, the immediacy of which you can know what a recruit's doing or get to her via text messaging, direct tweets on Twitter, Facebook,
And video. You
video.
can see
You can
video.
Skype phone calls now.
Right.
Wow.
It's amazing how much more invasive, you can be as a recruiter, or that you're allowed to be. And I think is trying to figure out what that young person wants. And I think this goes, whether if you talk to men's football recruiting, Kirk, Fran, Lisa, myself, the big thing is figuring out what that family requires of you and desires of you. Because I'm really pretty much against invasive recruiting. I think it's ridiculous that.
It doesn't feel natural, does it?
No, I think some of our competitors, they will text at 1 a.m. and they'll get on and they'll want to be their friends. And I'm just really against all of that, because as a coach, we're not their friend. Now we're part of their family, but friends, you can't guide as much, you can't discipline as much, and that's what you need to do as a coach. You need to not just hopefully win the Big Ten champion, but you're trying to help guide and nurture and develop a tremendously strong young woman that's going to go out and make the world a better place. So to recruit under the guise that, what kind of nail polish do you have? What's your favorite this or that? And I see that a lot, and perhaps I'm getting to be an older coach, but I feel like that's where social media alarms me, because you can have, we all need younger coaches on our staffs to relate, but I think there's no parameters with social media, what you can do, and even if there are some rules, you can't, I have my password to get in Facebook. So if I was breaking the rules, your ADs can't come in and see, are you breaking rules? And I think that's what a lot of the shady characters are doing out there. But number one, our staff has a high level of integrity, but number two, social media annoys me most of the time.
Well, I follow you on Facebook. I don't tweet, unlike Pat White here,
I
who
know.
is far more
Love
modern and
Doesn't
up-to-date than
own
I
a
am.
cell phone, but he
It's really-
tweets.
Yeah, no
I
cell
know. I
phone.
needed a cell phone today. I thought he had one. I called up Betty and hey, I need Pat's cell phone. She's like, he doesn't have one. I said at our last United Way meeting, he was looking at one. She said, that's mine. So I don't know how that works, but
Well, I think you do a great job with Facebook, and I'm not trying to flatter you, but it's really fun. I think you use it the way it was meant to be used, to update us on what's going on in your travels, because you travel a lot. You're the recruiting
yeah,
coordinator.
there's a lot of travels. I appreciate you saying that. I go back and forth. I really try to use Facebook and Twitter predominantly program promotion. And I've done a lot of studies on this, on how to use it, how to make it effective, and how do recruits want to be used, how do the parents respond to it. And, I always think I could be funnier or wittier, or what do you put on there? And I've learned you have to put a little personal, because we all like to have, like now meeting all of you, it's more enjoyable. I know you a little bit better. And I think that's the positive of the social media. But I think there's also a degree of which, how you use it. And I will always use it more for the program promotion. But every now and then, you'll put some raw emotions out there on a tough loss, or, man, it was so cool to, to get the hugs in the locker room, or I might put some things on there about my family, because I think that is all about hopefully building a fan base that really feels part of those big Penn State wins. And they do want to come out on a cold, snowy night and not watch on the Big Ten Network, but they want to see it all in 3D, because they know you a little bit better. And I think it's important for recruiting is that, you know, the young women we're recruiting see you as a person that's tired on occasion, that is, you know, getting 3 hours of sleep because your flight got delayed and you ended up having to drive and you hit 3 blizzards coming home and you needed 17 glasses of Diet Coke or whatever. And I think humor can be used in all of that, but I do think I got a long way to go on it, but I appreciate the fact that you're enjoying it.
It's really clear that you bust your butt every single day and night. You're putting some kind of effort, it seems like every waking minute, into Iowa women's basketball.
Well, that's part of the family atmosphere. I think what Jan said is pretty obvious when you go to a game over there or you hear any of the coaches talk about each other. You know, you're coaches, but you're friends. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty obvious, I think, to all Iowa fans. Yeah,
it shows.
And that's such a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the players,
we feel blessed. I mean, we get to work with some pretty, I mean, Lisa, I think she's as good as it gets as far as a head coach, and she gets it. And I think that's why she's retained Jenny Fitzgerald and myself, and why we've attracted Abby Emmert, a former player, to stay with us when she's had opportunities as well to go be a full-time coach. She's our director of basketball operations. Lacey Goldwire, if our fans haven't met her yet, she's, I think, a star in the making.
All right.
She's fantastic, but you know, you do work a lot of hours. I mean, think anybody that you're successful, whether you're a successful lawyer, businessman, you know, women, whatever you're running, you got to really trust and love the people when you're in the foxhole. And sports just happens to be pretty public. You know, people, if you're into it, you pay attention to if they're winning or losing. But you know, our staff, we have a true family, and I appreciate you saying that, because I couldn't be more proud of who I get to work with and the type of young women that we get to coach.
Well, you mentioned Lisa Bluter, and Lisa usually comes on our show every year. Mm-hmm. Usually in the summertime, Pat brings her in, and I asked her one time, well, first thing I did was I said, I find it incredible how you keep your cool when obvious horrible calls are being made on the floor. I said, what's your secret? And she said, Jan Jensen, she's my attack dog.
Or the attack dog, or the one that pulls her back.
Yeah,
you know?
well, that too,
sit down, Lisa.
Yeah.
So how did you and Lisa come to talk about you joining her staff?
Good question.
You were playing over in Germany. She was a coach at Drake.
Right. Well, you know,
what happened?
Number one, Lisa, I enjoyed my time at Drake, all of it, but the basketball piece was, there were some challenges just, you know, until she got there, and she just really epitomized how to make the game fun and bring out the strengths in everyone, and it was just a blast.
Did you know her before she came?
No, I didn't. I just knew when she got hired she had success at Ambrose. Yeah. But she just was one of those people that, you know, she made you a better player, but also a better person. And then she couldn't have been nothing but supportive with my career as it unfolded, and got me overseas and played, you know, professionally, which, you know, a kid from a rural town of 26 people to be a professional athlete at a time when it was really hard to do back then. There wasn't a lot of opportunities. You know, that type of support would forever change me. And then when I came back, I was going to be a graduate assistant, and I wanted to get a degree. And I had one of my all-time favorite people and mentor was a vice president at Drake, Don Adams, and he really worked with me a lot. And I thought I was going to be a president of a small college, a small liberal arts college is what I wanted to do. I liked administrations. I loved the college setting. Well, I came back and, you know, took the slow route to be get my master's. But then I woke up 23 years later, and I'm still coaching. And that's a credit to Lisa, because when I came back to become that GA, she was looking to hire a full-time person.
Did she have any staff then?
She did. She brought some folks with her, but then I played, and then I went overseas. And then when I came back, she lost one of her coaches who took the head job at St. Ambrose. And that woman is now the head coach at Missouri. So it was a great move for her. Yeah, Robin Pinchton.
Yeah.
So she didn't really get a great pool of applicants, or she didn't feel comfortable. So she went to our AD and said, you know, I know Jan's young. She doesn't have any experience, but I want to hire her as a full-time. And so I was really blessed, and I never had to go through the GA routes. So I think the loyalty that, everybody makes a big deal of, that I've stayed with Lisa this long, is Lisa took a chance on me when I was extremely young, and I've never forgotten that.
So your return to Drake was not to go into coaching with her, but to
I was going to be her
working
GA,
on a master's degree?
But I wanted to be, I was going to be a GA, and I was going to coach. That'd be awesome. As my alma mater, I loved Des Moines. I was close to my parents. And then as it's not, I guess, that surprising. I love sports. I love competing. And then I began to excel as coaching. But she allowed me to be a full-time coach, a full-time recruiter, and had that much trust in me as a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
And then when we got the opportunity to come over here, I had the opportunity to stay at Drake, and that was probably the first big crossroads. Is what to do, and I was really blessed to come over here, and the rest is history. But that's I think how it all started. I'm big on loyalty. I have a tight circle of people. I have a lot of acquaintances, but I have a very tight circle of people that I really trust, and the relationship Lisa and I have forged, and certainly Jenny Fitzgerald as well. It's been a blessing.
Then what was the next step was when Jenny joined your staff at Drake? What happened there? She was in graduate school
Jenny
someplace
went,
else too.
and I don't know if Jenny always wanted to be in coaching, but she knew she wanted to be in sports. I think she got her master's in sports administration, and I think maybe she thought she was going to be, on the business side of things. She was a business minor at Drake, and so she came back and was in a part-time assistant job. There's different, it's kind of like a director of basketball operations. All the titles have changed over the years. And I don't think either one of us thought we'd be long-term at Drake and then shift over here. But I think we both know God blessed us with great people, great opportunities, and really the rest has been history, a quick history. Although we've been together a long time, it's gone really fast.
We kind of skipped over one important person, Wayne Cooley.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about him briefly and the importance he placed on the Iowa girl. And you knew Wayne. Can you tell our viewers a little bit? And by the way, we're visiting with Jan Jensen, the longtime associate head coach at the University of Iowa for the women's basketball program. Again, talk a little about Wayne Cooley and what kind of person he was and the impact he's had on girls basketball here in Iowa.
Well, Wayne Cooley, for folks who don't really know the history of sports in Iowa, but he was the executive director of the Girls Iowa Athletic Union. And he really started that, golly. He just passed away this spring.
Right.
But, in the 50s and 60s, he just made his mark on wanting the Iowa girl to be special. And he really believed in equal opportunity. And he was a great businessman. He saw money, and he knew if he marketed a good product, and if you do any research on him, he knew that if you gave a good show, and he was the first to really pay very special attention to halftime entertainment at the girls' state tournament.
Good point.
And he made it a show in the 6-on-6 era. The halftime of the games, he had good-looking high school boys in tuxedos that would mop the floor.
Remember that?
And all the girls would swoon, and every aspect he orchestrated as if it was an event at Madison Square Garden. And in the midst of all of that, he truly fell in love with the Iowa girl and the promotion of that. And I think every successful high school athlete today owes a lot, in the state of Iowa, owes a lot to his vision and all of his hard work. Because we mentioned earlier, the state of Iowa in girls sports has long been far ahead of the rest of the nation. Because you said you were from Illinois.
Yeah.
And that's just
No
not
girls
very far away.
sports.
But I mean, we've run into that so many times in recruiting. We'll get talking, and moms and grandmothers will say, I never got to play. And they're like 6'3".
Yeah,
And
my
I'm like,
sisters
wow.
would have been great basketball players,
Yeah.
but they didn't have the opportunity.
Right.
Well, I think too, he kept the girls' union separate from the boys, which I think is unique to most, if not all, state high school athletic associations.
Sure.
And I think what that did was protected the girls, the girls athletes, but also just the whole event, the pageantry of the girls basketball tournament, to me, is
Right.
still appointment television. I'm watching that the whole way through every year. In fact, we've already started the playoffs.
I know.
We should remind the
know.
viewers, a lot of the teams started, a lot of the girls' teams started this week. And I don't remember when the state tournament is for the girls, Pat.
I don't
It's
know the
the-
dates. Jan
yeah,
probably
it's
knows the
the-
dates because my guess is
Yeah.
one of them will be up there watching the actual
Well,
recruits.
it's tough. They didn't consult with me when they changed it. They
Yeah.
moved the girls' state tournament up a week, and
Same
now
week
it's the
as the
same
Big
week
Ten.
as the Big Ten tournament. So now when I typically go, it's the first couple days or 3, but we're never there for the championship, or hopefully we're not.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
Yeah.
what I've just done is I make sure we see everybody in the state of Iowa as much as we can, and I'll save one evaluation for the state tournament in case we can go. And there's sometimes if I've seen a young woman we're recruiting 3 times, if we are unfortunately don't advance in the Big Ten tournament, by that time you are so exhausted,
Well, sure.
and you're gearing up for the NCAA tournament that if it's not a key matchup, I'll watch it on TV because it's on TV. So unfortunately, I don't look at the state tournament anymore as that must-do venue to see the evaluation because it coincides with our tournament.
Yeah.
Now, Pat mentioned earlier, you are also, besides the associate head coach, you are the recruiting coordinator for the women's team. And you've got, 4 high school seniors coming here
Yeah.
soon. Can you tell us a little bit about them,
They're-
please?
I'm really excited about this class. They're fun. You have to see what their preseason ranked in the top 20 or 30s or whatever they are, but it really doesn't matter until the end of their 4 years. But this group is as good as the top to bottom as we've had. We have a leading candidate for Miss Indiana basketball. Whitney Jennings and we just saw her. We played Purdue on Sunday. Saturday night they were playing for their sectional championship. So Lisa and I drove over. It was about an hour from West Lafayette.
The Logan Berries.
Yeah, the Logan
Just love
Berries.
that
I
name.
know. We ran in and we heard the whole story about those Logan Berries, how they got named. But she is worth the price of admission. She is about 5'5", 5'6", and people think, oh, that's pretty small, but she is fast, she's explosive. She has a quicker, smoother jump shot than most kids we've recruited in my history of recruiting.
Wow.
She just is a really fun, explosive player.
Thanks to Pat White.
Yeah, Pat's, he
been-
keeps them up. And,
I've met Whitney and her parents and her
Yeah.
brother, and I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
video on her thanks to Pat.
Yeah, she's
can't
really
wait.
fun.
I
Yeah,
can't wait.
and having her and Sam Logic on the floor together, they both run really quickly. They have a good skill and a sense of when to give the ball up, and so she's going to be fun. We have one of the top kids from Canada coming in, arguably one of the top 2. Her name is Christina Buttonham, and extremely intelligent young woman as well. But she's coming in with a crazy ACT and on shooting to be among the national team for the
Jan,
Canadians.
how did you first find her? Your recruiting
Yeah, it
branch
was.
is typically the
We
Midwest.
typically go 10 to 12 hour radius unless we have a connection. I was recruiting in Washington D.C. and I was watching, this court, and there's like 20 courts around, and Team Canada or Team Ontario, enough that they usually are typically one of the better ones, and so you'll try to watch them at some point just to see, because you never know about a Canadian kid. Sometimes they want to play in the Big Ten or the ACC, but sometimes they're wide open. They just want to go where they're, the sun shines maybe.
Yeah.
But she was on the court beside, and my court happened to be bad, so I looked over and I thought, wow, that kid's pretty good. And then I kept watching, so before I knew it, I'd left this court and went over, and then I tracked her for that whole tournament. Usually I'd see the Canadian team maybe play once, twice, just to see if there was, because if a Canadian kid isn't this much better than what you can get in Minnesota, that's a lot of time and money you're burning to get a
Yeah.
similar average, whatever. But she was well worth it. And then
What's her height?
5'9", and a
What
really
position, Jan?
she's a small forward, off guard, can play either.
2-3?
Yep, and she's really athletic and very defensive, plays very hard defensively, really smart. And like I say, she's among their top candidates for their top teams. I think, her goal is to make the Canadian Olympian team. So she's got a mission, and she's a great kid from a great family. And then we have 6'3" girl coming from Minnesota. Her name's Chase Coley. Really athletic, great leaper, shot blocker, having great numbers in Minneapolis right now. That was fun because we had kind of identified her early, and she was kind of raw, kind of reminds you of a little baby deer. She'd make something look really good, and then she'd look a little bit young or a little awkward. But we kind of felt something, and so we invited her to our camp and did great. We offered her, and then she blew up, and then everybody was offering her.
Oh, yeah.
But she's stuck with us, and I think she's going to be really fun to watch. And then
She's 5?
Yeah, she's a 5, a true center. But now the way we're playing now, if you watch, is Bethany
Yeah.
Doolittle is our center, but she didn't stay at the block. Bethany's not, 200 pounds and gonna just turn and use the glass. This kid's similar. She can hit the 15-footer. She's really quick off the dribble. So we're trying to play a little faster, a little quicker, and this is that type of center that is gonna. But I'm glad Bethany's a senior because this kid will need a year to kind of learn, and we need to get her a little stronger.
Bethany will be a senior.
Yeah, Bethany will be a
next year.
senior when this kid's a freshman.
Now, you have great luck with getting Minnesota kids to come to Iowa. Do you convince them that by going south to Iowa, it's going to be warmer?
Absolutely. We tell them it's usually 8 to 10 degrees warmer than that.
It's got to be agitating to the University of Minnesota.
Everything's relative.
Yeah, we kind of kid about that. But, Minnesota is, the Twin Cities area is just loaded. They can't possibly take everybody. And,
that's the only Division I school there.
And that's the thing, in the state of Iowa, our population is so much smaller. But you have, for women's basketball, you have 4 really great options for young women to look at. But in Minnesota, when you're the only show in town, per se, it's, most of the kids are just looking at the U is what they like to call themselves. So we have to battle that a lot. But I think our reputation, and we've had a lot of great Minnesotans on our team, that's really been helpful. And then getting Sam Logic from Wisconsin, one of our last freshmen coming in is Carly Moans, is a 6'2" power forward who, she's one of my all-time faves. She just does just blue collar. She has incredible hops. She gets every rebound that you think she shouldn't get. Plays really hard, and I think you're gonna love watching her play too. She just has a motor. She has a motor that just doesn't understand losing. It doesn't understand that she shouldn't get a rebound. And I really am excited about these kids.
Kind of a Cash Alexander, maybe?
Yeah, in a power forward, but she's kind of that explosiveness with the rebounding. And they're all just really neat kids, and that's one thing I love about our program. It's the names may change on the jerseys, but that hard work ethic, that understanding we're role models, understanding that we're not going to win at all costs, but we are going to do it the right way, and we're all in the same mission to be good ambassadors of Iowa. And when the parents and the kids come that buy into that, it's really fun to get those kids to say yes. And this group of families and kids coming in, they're as good as it gets.
Well, I just love watching Samantha Logic play basketball. There's something about her that is just extraordinary. Her court sense, her ability to just know not only where she should be, but where her teammates are and how to get them the ball. It just blows me away. And like Lisa loves to say, she's a triple-double waiting to happen
She
at
really
any time.
is. I tell you, she's got 3 this year.
Yeah.
3 in 1 year. It's crazy, and it's crazy for a point guard to be able to get that.
And she really is a legitimate player of the year in the Big Ten.
Oh, she should
candidate.
be. Wow.
Yeah, I think Lisa. If you go to what a player of the year should mean, what she means to our team in so many categories. But again, a lot of times people go to scoring and what you're doing. Sam can score, but Sam does so many other things other than just score.
Yeah.
But she certainly means a whole lot to this club. That's for sure.
And we knew it as fans the minute we saw her freshman year. She started her freshman year.
Yep.
And I just hadn't seen anybody quite like her. And tough as nails.
Yeah, she is.
She's lost half a tooth and a good chunk of her scalp.
Yeah.
Not once but twice this season.
Yeah. She's one of those rare players that they're fun because when she has the ball, you know something's going to happen. You don't know what it's going to be, if it's going to be that home run pass or an unbelievable move to the basket. But she's just fun. She's a special player. We're blessed to have her.
The play that I love with Sam, and she can do it somewhat at the free throw line or even lower to the basket. When she gets in there with the ball, with her back to the basket,
Yeah.
you know something good.
Exactly. If
She's
gonna
close to
find
the basket.
someone- Yeah.
She's unstoppable.
Yeah.
She scores
Right.
almost every time down there. And if she's out a little higher, she scans the whole floor and finds her
Yeah,
open
she's gonna
teammate
find-
for the three.
She's got amazing court vision. Yeah, she's really a special player. And, you know,
I think she
was,
is the player of the year.
Yeah, if you the definition of it, what they're supposed to be,
Yeah.
I think that her name's got to be in the conversation.
Well, and she almost never comes out.
No,
Yeah.
she doesn't.
It scares me when she's
Yeah.
not in there.
Yeah, I know. That's
I
when
think
you
it
have those
scares
kind
the
of
coaching
players.
staff too.
And we
Yeah.
should talk about Tierra Taylor, the
Yeah.
lone senior on the women's basketball team this year. You talk about special women. I don't know anyone who's been through what she has physically.
I'm glad you asked that question because I was going to ask about her.
Yeah.
Tell us about Tierra. Tell the viewers what she's been through, how many
She's a-
knee surgeries.
Yeah.
As a fan, she's the smoothest.
She
She's
is.
real smooth.
Yeah.
Like butter.
She is. She's one of our just the most athletic kids, and she's had 3 knee injuries, as you mentioned. And coming out of high school, she was one of the top kids in the country, and we got her over UCLA, Pitt, Minnesota, and us. And we just stayed at it, and it was a kid that was okay coming to where she felt she fit. And it was such a shame when she had her first knee injury. It was at the game before state in high school. So then she really wasn't herself that freshman year, and then she had the other one, and then we had another one. So when just anytime you see her be smooth this year, I mean, sometimes at her first half against Purdue, she had 17 points, and
that was
she was as smooth as
Unbelievable.
we'd seen her. And it just kind of makes you well up. And in the office sometimes we'll rewind in the film, and you get a lump in your throat because this is a kid that really could have called it quits, a couple of years
Several
ago.
times.
Yeah.
And to now see her playing and having the just really true joy in those locker rooms after the big wins and performances, and she's a great role model for our players. And they,
Well put.
when they get kind of, when it's tired and we're running our wind sprints, and you can just see every now and then when they're about ready to hang on their shorts, they'll look over and they'll see Tierra's not hanging over. And everybody picks themselves up, and if Tierra can do it, by golly, I can do it. And they also have fun with her. They do call her the grandmother on the team because she's been here, they call it 16 years.
Well, these were not little cartilage, cleanup injuries.
Right.
These were major ligament tears. It takes a long time to overcome. It's very painful, and she's done it 3 times.
Yeah.
And kept going and kept coming back.
And there are very few people who come back after 2, and even more limited that come after 3. And
I
for
don't
her
know
to do
anyone
it-
else who has. Maybe you do.
Yeah, I do. A couple of kids in the league have,
Yeah.
but we haven't known anyone personally.
We're about out of time. We've been visiting with Jan Jensen, the longtime associate head coach at the University of Iowa for the women's basketball team. The United Way, very special to you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it means, what the United Way means to you.
Well, I appreciate you asking. Going back to when I grew up in my area, my parents, they just really instilled in me, just a way of life was to help others and to give back. And if anybody ever asked you to help, you said yes. And as I grew up as a young person and, in my hometown, but then went to Des Moines, and you had a platform as a Drake player and could go to different, community outreaches. And then I became a coach, and there are so many times, so many great entities ask you to be a part of it, whether it's the crisis center, the shelter house, it's, they're all good causes. And I started out here being on the shelter house board, and then I got involved also with the United Way board and so forth. But what I found about the United Way is it's a great umbrella for the community. because it services 31 agencies, in, the crisis center, the shelter
Exactly.
house, all the money that we do raise as part of the United Way, we have an allocation process that they do get those monies. And so it was a natural fit because as a coach, my time is limited and I can't
Yeah.
always get to every gala, whether it's, to support Ronald McDonald House or Alzheimer's or whatever you have. The United Way, I knew if I could, be involved in that was a way that I could kind of support a lot of great things happening. And then the United Way, what I really like, they've had a shift. Sally Mason was part of it. Charlie Funk, a great community leader.
Oh, we know Charlie.
Josh Schamberger. We did
Know
this
Josh very well.
2020 vision goals. So in the areas of health, education, and income, if you look at our community, which, we're pretty blessed, most of us sitting here, that
Yes.
we've had a lot of affluence, maybe not a lot of, situations where we're not really knowing where that next paycheck's gonna come from or that next meal. We found a way to measure those areas, education, health, and income, that if we can put some money towards these areas, especially with the youth, that maybe we can ward off some of the problems that we're facing in certain pockets of our community. So I really have liked the shift, the leadership with Christine Sheets, Dan Brown, Patty Fields, and I've worked with them the last
Patty
few
and
years.
Christine very well. Good
And
people.
good people, and what they're doing with the staff of 6, and the amount of money that we're trying to raise. And this year, Pat was kind enough. My partner Julie Fitzpatrick and I were campaigns of or co-chairs of the United Way campaign, and you have to, like recruiting, you got to get a good
Yeah.
team. So I called one of the best community guys I knew, and Pat White, and he signed
the
up
best.
to help us, and it's just been a joy. I appreciate you asking, but getting to work with people like Pat and a lot of these community leaders and people who work in our community who are giving their time and their money to help raise money has really been a blessing. And we've had a good time. We raised a little bit of money along the way, and hopefully we're going to reach our goal that we've set up here. So it's been a blessing.
And that's the United Way. It's an umbrella organization that covers many others. We've been visiting with Jan Jensen, as I said, the longtime associate head coach for the Iowa women's basketball program. We've got to get out of here because we've run out of time. But on behalf of Bob Boyd and Pat White and Earl Murphy, I'm Dirk Keller, thanking you for watching Sports Opinion every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on Channel 18 and again on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Guys, remember this. Either you're a Hawk or you're not. Go Hawks!
Amen.